I want to tell you about my new book. It's called Groundswell, The Case for Fracking. In a way, it's a sequel to my earlier book, Ethical Oil, The Case for Canada's Oil Sands. In that book, I argued that until we develop some fantasy fuel of the future that's perfect in every way, we're going to be using oil and gas. So until we invent dilithium crystals or whatever, we've got to get our oil and gas from somewhere. Even Greenpeace, in their radical energy revolution propaganda, says it'll be at least 40 years of transition until that future fuel, well, which hasn't even been invented yet, is found. So for the next 40 years, in other words, for the rest of my life, the real choice is between ethical oil from Canada's oil sands or conflict oil from OPEC countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. That's just where the oil is. That was my book, Ethical Oil, reminding people that whatever oil sands flaws are, they're better in every measure than conflict oil. Simply put, Canada is more environmentally responsible, more peaceful, treats workers better, and respects human rights and minority rights more than the oil dictatorships of the world. Well, every one of those arguments applies to natural gas too, and more. See, the oil sands are found in just one place in the world, Alberta. If Alberta were its own country, it would have the third highest oil reserves in the world, behind only Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. That's how big the oil sands are. That's why OPEC sees them as such a threat. But fracking, that is the technology of hydraulic fracturing that allows us to drill for gas or oil in previously impossible rock formations called shale, well, fracking can happen all over the world. Shale rock is one of the most common rock formations in any continent. It's really just compressed mud, and there's gas or oil trapped in those tiny little rocky pores. Conventional oil and gas production is like drilling into the center of a watermelon, putting in a straw and sucking out the juice. But in shale, it would be like trying to use a straw to suck the juice out of an apple. Well, in 1947, the Staniland Oil and Gas Corporation tried out an idea. They pumped 1,000 gallons of gel under high pressure down into a well a half-mile under the ground to make little cracks in the limestone rock. Those cracks released natural gas that was otherwise trapped in the shale. Now, 2 years later, the process was patented and called hydrofrac, hydraulic pressure, little fractures. They found a way to release all the apple juice in the apple by making tiny cracks inside of it. Since the 1940s, more than 1 million oil and gas wells in the United States have been fracked, and more than 100,000 in Canada, too. In fact, these days, 90% of all new gas wells are drilled using fracking technology. In recent years, traditional fracking was combined with horizontal drilling. To use the straw analogy, it would be like using a bendy straw. After drilling straight down for a mile or more, the drill bit would be turned at an angle and slowly would curve over sideways until it was like a bendy straw bending 90 degrees, like the letter L, or a foot, actually. That's what drillers call it, the toe, the heel. Fracking plus horizontal drilling was a breakthrough because oil and gas are found in rock layers that run sideways usually, horizontal like that. So now instead of having to drill straight down over here, and then straight down over here, and then straight down over here, just to get that same horizontal rock formation a mile deep, the one well can now go sideways along the whole formation. It's not just much more economical and efficient, it's a much smaller environmental footprint back up on the surface. In fact, several horizontal wells can go out in different directions from the same drill pad, like daisy paddles. Horizontal drilling on shore can actually reach out under the sea. And here's my first main point. Whereas the oil sands are one particular geological miracle in one particular place, Alberta, fracking is a technology that can be used in theory anywhere there's shale. And shale is a very common rock. Here's a map published by the U.S. Energy Information Agency showing shale gas around the world. It is literally found on every continent. Unlike traditional oil and gas, which for some bizarre cosmic reason is concentrated in the hands of dictatorial regimes, OPEC and Russia, shale gas is in many of the world's great democracies in the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, France, all over South America, Eastern Europe. Russia and China have their share of shale gas too. But my main point for telling you all this is to tell you why shale gas and the fracking technology to get at it is so important. In a way, more important even than Alberta's mother lode of oil sands, because you can't move the oil sands. You can't take it to Europe or Asia. You can't duplicate it. In fact, that's its political weakness, isn't it? Anti-oil sands radicals have figured out that if you can cut the oil sands off by blocking pipelines like the Keystone XL pipeline to the U.S. or in the Northern Gateway pipeline to the BC coast, you can isolate the oil sands and neutralize it. OPEC dictatorships can beat the oil sands by basically putting a sort of embargo on the province of Alberta. That's what this 2008 Rockefeller Brothers Fund financed anti-oil sands campaign explicitly sets out to do. They drew a map of the pipelines and committed to blocking every one of them with lawsuits and political action. We'll try that with shale gas found all over the world. I have argued that oil sands oil is morally superior to OPEC oil. I've called the oil sands oil ethical oil, freedom oil. It's true. But the same goes for fracking over natural gas, and even more so. Just look at the news of the past few months from Russia and Ukraine. Russia has the world's largest reserves of natural gas by far. And in second place is Iran. And in third place, Qatar. All of them are nasty characters. And like OPEC, they have tried to form a cartel to keep prices high, to gouge gas consumers. And it was working very well. As recently as 2008, natural gas prices, even here in North America, were sky high, over $12 per 1,000 cubic feet. It was so expensive and in such short supply that all over North America, including in New Brunswick, companies were building massive LNG import facilities. LNG stands for liquefied natural gas, where enormous amounts of gas were supercooled and packed into specialized tanker ships in a market dominated by odious countries like Qatar. It was like the OPEC oil shock all over again, but this time with natural gas. It was tough times. But then fracking took off like a rocket in places like Texas and Oklahoma and Pennsylvania, and natural gas fell from $12 per 1,000 cubic feet down to 10 to 5, even for a moment below $2. It's now back around $4.50, but it's down for good. And in North America, at least, it'll never be back up to $12 a 1,000 cubic feet. That's because in fracking, the United States is actually now the world's largest producer of natural gas, not the largest reserves, but it's producing so much every day, it's actually considering exporting natural gas. Imagine that. The U.S. actually being energy self-sufficient instead of having to buy it from Arab dictatorships. And Canada, well, good Lord, Canada has it even better. We have enormous amounts of shale gas, not as much as Russia or even as much as the U.S., but because our population is smaller and we don't consume as much ourselves, we're in a position to be a massive exporter of this stuff, especially to Asia. Countries like Japan and Korea still pay outrageous amounts for gas. Seriously, around $18 per 1,000 cubic feet, or quadruple what we pay at home. That's how bad the Russia-Iran-Qatar cartel is being. This is going to be amazing. We're going to get rich. And just as important, we're going to help free our friends in Japan and Korea and other places in the world from buying natural gas at extortionist prices from the bad guys. And even better, natural gas is clean. It just is. It burns clean. It's low pollution. And for folks who are global warming worriers, I'm not, but for some who are, natural gas has a smaller carbon footprint than alternative fuels like coal. In fact, as the U.S. fracking revolution has gone full tilt and natural gas has become so cheap, U.S. power plants have shifted over from coal to gas, just for sheer economic reasons. Well, guess what? All of that switching from coal to natural gas has reduced U.S. carbon dioxide emissions more than any other country in the world. The U.S. now emits less CO2 than it did in 1992. Seriously, the U.S. population has never been bigger. Its economy has never been bigger. But it emits less greenhouse gases now than it did 20 years ago, simply because of fracking. That's amazing, especially considering the U.S. never even ratified the Kyoto Protocol. Talk about a win-win-win. Tons of fracking jobs in Canada and the U.S., cheaper gas prices than before, and for global warming worrywarts, a real solution. So naturally, OPEC hates fracking. They hate it with a passionate rage, the same way Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Russia and Iran hate the oil sands. They hate fracking too, even more actually. The oil sands are great, but they literally produce only 2% of the world's daily oil supplies. And like I say, they're landlocked and trapped. But fracking, it's produced so much gas. Those LNG facilities along U.S. coasts are being converted into export terminals, as in to sell U.S. gas to the world, to compete with Iran and Qatar and Russia. Vladimir Putin is not amused, and I'll tell you what he's going to do about it after the break. So I've told you about fracking. It's short for hydraulic fracturing, invented in the 1940s, done more than 1 million times since then. But the fracking revolution has only occurred big time in the last 5 years when it combined with horizontal drilling and new discoveries of shale gas. It's making America rich, and it's about to make BC even richer. Last October, the Malaysian company called Petronas announced it was going to invest $36 billion in BC's fracking and pipeline and LNG terminals. $36 billion in one province? That's the largest infrastructure investment in Canadian history. Happy days, right? Well, that's the thing, because right now, the existing natural gas cartel, Russia, Iran, Qatar, likes things very much the way they are. Thank you very much. Qatar loves selling natural gas at $18 in Japan that it produces, using foreign indentured workers for about $1 back in Qatar. Russia's massive gas company, called Gazprom, is a $95 billion colossus, an extraordinarily profitable company. But to call it a company isn't quite accurate. Gazprom doesn't even pretend to be an independent company. It's an arm of Russian foreign policy, designated a strategic company akin to a jet fighter manufacturer. Every foreign contract must be approved by the Kremlin. Prices are set by the Kremlin. It's about as independent as those masked gunmen running around Crimea. Vladimir Putin uses natural gas to get what he wants. 6 months ago, when Ukraine was considering an economic treaty with the European Union, pulling it away from Russia's orbit, Putin bribed Ukraine with $20 billion worth of freebies, including a 30% cut in gas prices if it rejected the West. But after Ukrainians deposed Viktor Yanukovych, Putin's ally in Kiev, Gazprom jacked gas prices right back up from $7.65 to $11.33 per thousand cubic feet. Gazprom's pricing doesn't even pretend to be based on market conditions. It's a political cartel like OPEC is for oil, except OPEC is 12 countries that often squabble and cheat on each other instead of fixing prices together. Russia is just one country, and it dominates Europe, not just Eastern European and Baltic countries, some of which rely 100% on Russian gas, but Germany too, and even the United Kingdom. Here's a handy map published in the Russian newspaper Izvestia, showing the different European countries that Gazprom sells to and the Russian prices, the different prices. It's in Russian, but the numbers are readable. You can see there is no economic rhyme or reason to it. Russia makes Ukraine and Poland pay more for gas, for example, than it makes Germany pay. How does that make sense? Germany is further away. The same pipeline that goes to Germany actually goes through Poland first, but Putin makes the Poles pay more for the same molecules of gas than if they live further away in Germany. It makes no economic sense because it's not economic, it's political. It's how Putin rewards friends and punishes enemies. That's why NATO sanctions against Putin have been laughable. For Europeans, putting sanctions on Russia is like you or me putting sanctions on our own natural gas company. In fact, on 2 occasions, Putin has put sanctions on the West. He simply cut off Ukraine's natural gas in the dead of winter without notice. 2 times he did that. The Sun's Marissa Semkiw did this powerful presentation about how, under Vladimir Putin, gas has become a weapon. Look at this.
Vladimir Putin might have tanks, supersonic fighters, and nuclear-tipped missiles. But perhaps his greatest weapon lies in the ground of Russia itself. Gazprom, the Russian natural gas giant, holds a knife to much of Europe's throat. The European Union depends on Russia for approximately 1/4 of its natural gas. The Baltic states, Finland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia receive 100% of their gas from Russia. Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, over 80%. Poland, the Czech Republic, Austria, Turkey, Greece, and Slovenia. Over half of their gas comes from Russia. Even economic powerhouse Germany is dependent on Russia for nearly 40% of its gas. With annual revenues topping $150 billion and profits upwards of $40 billion, Gazprom provides much needed revenue to the Kremlin's coffers. But Gazprom is not just a normal company operating according to market principles trying to get returns for its shareholders. Gazprom is designated a strategic company, giving exceptional powers to Moscow. Upon coming to power in 2000, Vladimir Putin almost immediately moved to renationalize the company, purging the board of directors and installing his political crony, Dmitry Medvedev, as chairman. Sound familiar? Medvedev is currently Putin's prime minister. Under Putin, the gas giant is inextricably linked to Russia's formidable foreign policy machine. Gazprom routinely treats former Soviet bloc countries differently than the rest of Europe. Gazprom charges the tiny Baltic states more than double for gas than what Russia pays. Germany even pays less for gas than Poland, even though Poland is closer to Russia. Gas from the very same pipeline costs more in Poland. Earlier this month, Putin announced he was unilaterally hiking the price of natural gas on Ukraine by 70%. He also warned that if Ukraine does not pay its bill up front with $35 billion, Russia would turn off the taps, as it did previously in 2006 and 2009. In 2012, Russia threatened to cut gas supplies to Moldova in the middle of winter, with Russian Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin warning in a thinly veiled threat, "I hope you won't freeze." While the Berlin Wall might have fallen and the Soviet Union rightfully lies in the ash heap of history, it's clear that Vladimir Putin is not willing to surrender Russian control over Eastern Europe. Time will tell if Europe will free itself from the shackles of Russian natural gas.
Very powerful video by Martin Gardner and Marissa Semkiw. But you saw the map of where shale gas is. Take a look at that again. Ukraine and Poland have enormous shale formations themselves. So do other European countries, including France and the UK. But for Poland and Ukraine, that have been invaded so many times by Russia, that are still, as you just saw, dominated by Russia economically, precisely because of natural gas, fracking isn't just about cheaper prices. It's about freedom and national sovereignty and about getting out from under the boot of Putin. Are you starting to get it? That's why Russia and Qatar hate fracking so much. It's bad enough that the United States is no longer dependent on natural gas imports from them and might even start some serious exporting. But the crown jewel for Gazprom is Russia. The prize customer, and Europe. The prize customer for Qatar is Japan and Korea. What if British Columbia started exporting Canadian ethical gas to Japan and Korea? What if Ukraine and Poland started producing their own democratic gas? That, my friends, is cause for panic in the opulent Moscow headquarters of Gazprom. Seriously, check out these pictures from Gazprom's corporate offices. It's like some weird cross between Dr. Evil's lair and some 1970s dance club. It's so gaudy, so over the top, so gangster style, which it is. I mean, Russia's military energy industrial complex is run by political cronies and oligarchs. Putin himself is an ex-KGB officer. These guys don't even hide it. They all remind me of characters from The Sopranos. I mean, just for fun, look at this senior Gazprom executive, Vladimir Tumayev. He used to run the Gazprom-sponsored soccer team, and even though he was in his late 50s, he's in his 60s now, he sometimes put himself on the field to play. I mean, what? Do you think anyone was going to tell a Russian business boss no? That's his style, a bit like a professional wrestler, a bit like Tony Soprano, a bit like his boss, Vladimir Putin, loving to take his shirt off all the time, and no free press to mock him or scrutinize him, no independent courts to keep him in check. Here, check this out. Here's Tumayev, the soccer guy, the executive, singing Gazprom's company song. Seriously, they have a company song. And Tumayev, the business tycoon who thinks he's a great soccer player, also thinks he's a great singer and video star. And of course, no one dares to tell the boss that maybe he's not.
Всем нужна и в праздники, и в будни. Давай за нас, давай за вас, давай за весь российский газ, чтоб не кончался, чтобы был, хоть нелегко дается. Давай за нас, давай за вас, давай за весь российский газ.
Rossiyski gas. I love that. The Gazprom song about heavy industry and drilling explosive gas is also a drinking song. Do you think the Cold War is over? Do you think Tumayev and Putin and the rest of them are any different, other than they've ditched communism for crony capitalism now? That's why fracking is critically important. These Russian toughs, just like the Saudi and Qatari dictators, have a lock on Europe and Asia. Fracking could free those places. Whose side are you on? I know which side I'm on, and I'll tell you why I'm on it after the break. So that's the fight. The dictators who have the conventional gas now and the democracies who don't, but this miracle called hydraulic fracturing will create literally something from nothing. Will make useless shale rock, common dime-a-dozen rock, into the source of literally trillions of dollars of natural gas, of freedom gas. It's almost like the medieval fairy tale of alchemy, turning lead into gold. This is turning shale into natural gas and into freedom. So which side are you on? Well, I know which side Gazprom is on. They have ferociously denounced fracking, even fracking in North America, which is weird because they don't sell any natural gas in the United States. But they know that if they can demonize fracking in the U.S., they have a better chance of scaring off Europeans from fracking over there. In 2010, when fracking was really gearing up in the U.S., Gazprom's Alexander Medvedev told reporters, and I quote, "Not every housewife," I won't read it in a Russian accent. "Not every housewife is aware of the environmental consequences of the use of shale gas. I don't know who would take the risk of endangering drinking water reservoirs." In 2011, Gazprom put out a press release warning that fracking, and I quote, "is associated with significant environmental risks, in particular the hazard of surface and underground water contamination with chemicals applied in the production process." Wow, I didn't know that Vladimir Putin cared so much for the safety of American households. It's really good to know that Vladimir Putin has our interests. It's not just Putin. The OPEC country of Venezuela has come out against fracking, too. An employee of Venezuela's state-run film authority helped make the anti-fracking propaganda film Gasland. And when that film didn't receive an Oscar, the Venezuelan embassy itself tweeted out its disappointment. Seriously, here's the tweet. "Sadly, Gasland didn't win an Oscar because a Venezuelan helped make it. A foreign country, an OPEC rival, wasn't even hiding its war against U.S. energy independence. Other OPEC countries hate fracking too. A United Arab Emirates corporation helped finance Matt Damon's 2012 anti-fracking drama called Promised Land. Again, not even hiding it. And of course, the state broadcasters of Russia and Qatar, in Russia it's called RT, and Qatar's Al Jazeera, are obsessed with demonizing fracking. Seriously, when there were anti-fracking riots in New Brunswick, Canada last year, thousands of miles away from Qatar, Al Jazeera flew in a whole camera crew and camped out for days. The local rioters actually publicly stated that the only media they trusted to tell their side of the story, other than an Aboriginal TV station, was Al Jazeera. They knew they had an anti-fracking ally in that OPEC broadcaster. So that's who hates fracking. The existing natural gas cartel, the dictators who would love market share and money and political power and would lose it if their customers had another supplier or if their customers actually began to frack their own gas. Fracking isn't about Canadian Liberal Party members versus Conservative Party members or Democrats versus Republicans in the U.S. It's bigger than that. It's about dozens of the world's free countries having a rare chance to free themselves from energy slavery to OPEC and Russia. That's what this fight is about. It's a war, a propaganda war. And you know, maybe if Ukraine had been fracking these past 5 years, it would have been rich enough and strong enough and independent enough to stand up to Russia. But we'll never know. That's who hates fracking: Russia, Qatar, Iran. And they're useful idiots in the Western media. But what about their arguments? Is it true that fracking is dangerous? Gazprom says so. They say fracking poisons water. Well, and what about that film Gasland, made in part by a Venezuelan government worker? Does fracking really make your tap water catch fire? Does it cause earthquakes? Does it cause cancer? We'll answer the Gazprom Gasland lies after the break. So what does OPEC think about fracking? What do our enemies think about fracking? Well, last year, a secret memo written by this man, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, one of the richest men in Saudi Arabia, warned their own dictatorship about the threat of fracking. Prince Walid wrote, and I quote, "In addition to the many discoveries of oil and gas in the U.S., Canada, and Australia, there are also great discoveries of shale gas, which will lead to a reduction of consumption of our oil. At the moment, there are no risks to the Saudi economy as a result of the production of this type of gas, but we were also hoping that Your Highness would shed a light and focus on the seriousness of this matter sooner rather than later, especially since the United States and some Asian countries have made great discoveries in the extraction of shale gas, which inevitably will have an effect on the global oil industry in general and Saudi Arabia in particular." Obviously, this is a translation from Arabic. Prince Al-Walid mentions Canada specifically, and he uses it along with the words "the threat." He says, quote, "We believe that the threat is inevitably coming from shale gas, which its production is increased at high rates in the U.S. and Canada. For us, the issue is clear and it requires swift actions." what swift actions will those be? I hope it's not Saudi-style terrorism like 9/11, but maybe it's Saudi-style propaganda. See, that's the thing about anti-oil sands and anti-fracking activists. The Saudis and Qataris and Russians and Venezuelans, they usually stay pretty quiet. They usually let Americans do the talking for them. They know that we all hate OPEC and being under OPEC's thumb, and if OPEC made these arguments themselves, we'd dismiss them. So OPEC relies on people like Josh Fox. Fox's 2010 movie Gasland could have been called Gazprom, not Gasland, because he did all the heavy lifting for Putin. It's a boring, plodding movie that I guess I forced myself to watch it twice. I say that because Fox, this hipster from New York, narrates the whole thing in his overacted, sexy voice, like this.
This is my house. It's in the middle of the woods, tucked away on a dirt road in a place called Milanville, Pennsylvania. The house was built in 1972 when I was born. My parents and their hippie friends built it, and my family and my brothers and sisters and I grew pretty much the same way I did, little by little.
It's painful, that sexy voice. It's also a lie. He actually grew up in New York. But people bought it. I mean, it's terrifying. Listen to how he describes fracking fluid. Would you be terrified of this?
In order to frack, you need some fracking fluid, a mix of over 596 chemicals. From the unpronounceable, to the unknown, to the too well-known. The brew is full of corrosion inhibitors, gelants, drilling additives, biocides, shale control inhibitors, liquid breaker aids, viscosifiers, liquid gel concentrates. On the side of that frack fluid truck, it should say, just add water.
Did you get that? Fracking chemicals are a secret, says Josh Fox. They're scary sounding, and they actually cause cancer. Except, about that? Except the fracking companies publish exactly what's in their fracking fluid, down to the liter. Here's one company, Range Resources, just picked it out of the blue. They do this across the United States and Canada. You can search their websites for individual drilling rigs. Here's one. For example, I just picked it at random from Pennsylvania. It lists in every detail, from the phone numbers of the fracking workers, to the exact sources and amount of water used, to the exact depth of this fracking, in this case 2 miles deep, to the exact amount of each chemical used. And then at the end, an explanation of common uses of those chemicals, like water treatment chemicals. Pretty much the opposite of secret. I mean, some do sound scary. I mean, like this one.
From the unpronounceable, to the unknown, to the too well-known.
I mean, that is scary, right? Well, I Googled that big, 30-letter word. It's a fungicide sort of thing to stop little mushrooms from growing. I mean, we use that same fungicide in leather goods. We use it to keep food seeds fungus-free. Really, it's got nothing to do with oil and gas. It's just used in fracking sometimes, like it's used with leather goods sometimes or anything else, to stop fungus. But it sounds terrifying. And what was that he called ethylbenzene? He called it a known carcinogen, something that makes cancer. Well, I mean, Josh Fox and his Venezuelan filmmaker friend, they wouldn't lie to us, would they? Well, it turns out the EPA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, they have a whole website dedicated to ethylbenzene. Let me quote. EPA has classified ethylbenzene as a Group D, not classifiable as to human carcinogenicity. As in, it has not been found to cause cancer. Has not. Hasn't. Josh Fox says it has. Why would he lie? Well, let's ask Lisa Jackson, President Obama's first EPA director. She appeared before Congress and was asked if, in the entire history of fracking in the USA, since the 1940s, if any groundwater, any drinking water, has ever been contaminated by these scary fracking chemicals. Remember, 99% of fracking fluid is water and then sand to keep the cracks open. These are the other chemicals in trace amounts, that fungicide. But still, did they ever contaminate drinking water? Look.
Is there any evidence that hydraulic fracturing, however, can affect aquifers and water supplies?
There is evidence that it can certainly affect them. I am not aware of any proven case where the fracking process itself affected water, although there are investigations ongoing.
It just hasn't happened. The federal EPA, the state EPAs, they have never found a single case of contaminated groundwater. They just haven't. Josh Fox's movie says they have. I mean, he quoted this guy, who seems pretty legit to me.
We had iron, chloride, sodium, strontium, barium, 3 different types of uranium. 2 of them are weapons grade.
Hang on. Weapons grade uranium in his water because of fracking? That's what the Sautner family says. Josh Fox turned the Sautners into celebrities. Weapons grade uranium from fracking? Of course it wasn't true. The EPA tested their water again and again, each time saying it was drinkable. There's no weapons grade uranium in there. But which is more exciting for a filmmaker? Which would sell more tickets to a movie? The boring truth or nuclear reactive water? But the most powerful image in the Gasland movie was the claim that fracking makes tap water explode. I mean, look at this.
Oh yeah, I saw it go up for a second.
Yeah. We'll just give it a second here. Whoa, Jesus Christ.
Now that's true. That really happened. And Josh Fox says it's because of fracking, right? But burning methane in tap water has nothing to do with fracking. Fracking happens hundreds, even thousands of feet deeper than any drinking water. There are just some places in the world where naturally occurring methane mixes with water, has for centuries. There are towns all across the United States called Burning Springs. There's Burning Springs, Kentucky, Burning Springs, West Virginia, Burning Springs, New York, founded 1669, a bit before fracking came along. But it's a powerful image, so powerful that this guy thought he'd do his own movie making. Not just a spluttering spark from a tap, but a full-out flamethrower. Look at that thing go. Oh, it was from fracking, don't you know? Like the Sautners with their weapons-grade water, this flamethrower guy, Stephen Lipsky, was suing a fracking company for big bucks. This was the evidence of the harm to him, except, that Lipsky was found by the courts to have rigged the whole thing. Let me quote to you from the court judgment. He did, quote, intentionally attach a garden hose to a gas vent, not to a water line, and then light and burn the gas from the end nozzle of the hose. The demonstration was not done for scientific study, but to provide local and national news media of a deceptive video calculated to alarm the public into believing the water was burning, unquote. That's what the judge found. Josh Fox put that in his movie, though. It was a fraud. But hey, I mean, considering the other things that Iran or Vladimir Putin might do to us, you think a Hollywood lie is pretty mild, right? Look, 1 million wells drilled. Not one case of contamination ever confirmed by the EPA. Flaming faucets that either do so from naturally occurring gas or rigged for propaganda and lawsuits. Mysterious fracking fluid that's so mysterious, the companies publish its ingredients down to the liter, with water and sand making up 99% of it. It's propaganda. It suits Gazprom and OPEC just fine. But we're almost out of time. But after the break, I'll deal with one more lie, the lie that fracking causes earthquakes. Come right back. Okay, so we know why some people hate fracking, people like Vladimir Putin of Russia, or the King of Saudi Arabia, or other OPEC dictatorships, because fracking will break their energy cartel, costing them billions, maybe even trillions of dollars over time. And for bullies like Vladimir Putin, it will cost him his power over places like Poland and Ukraine. But Josh Fox and other anti-fracking propagandists in the West have to come up with different reasons, right? And it's tough, because natural gas is cheap and plentiful and clean, and fracking has been done literally more than 1 million times. And just watch Lisa Jackson again, Obama's EPA director, say it one more time.
Is there any evidence that hydraulic fracturing, however, can affect aquifers and water supplies?
There is evidence that it can certainly affect them. I am not aware of any proven case where the fracking process itself affected water, although there are investigations ongoing.
I can confirm that since she made that statement, not one more case, not a single case has been found yet. Who knows, maybe one day one will be, but nothing yet. Yeah, I'm guessing if fracking contaminated water, an anti-fossil fuels guy like Barack Obama would be all over it. But it isn't, so he can't be. But what about earthquakes? I mean, that is technically what fracking is, right? Causing tiny grain of sand-sized cracks in the rocks. It's a mile or two deep underground, but still, I mean, who knows what's going on deep down under? Ask David Suzuki, right?
Fracking is one of the dumbest technologies there is. We have no idea what is under the ground. You know, we're kind of, because we're an air-breathing land lubber living on the top skin of the planet, we think out of sight there's nothing down there. We have no idea what we're doing when we pump vast amounts of water down there. We have no idea whether it'll end up contaminating our drinking water. We don't know. But we're just going to go down there and try to frack as much gas as we can get out of the ground. This is just, I think, crazy.
I think he should say that while wearing like a wizard's hat, don't you? Who knows what's underground? We could be waking up elves or even dragons, right? I'm not kidding, but I guess I'm kidding, but not by much. I mean, look at some of the terrifying headlines from the United Kingdom after fracking reportedly caused earthquakes on the surface. Oh, here's the UK Independent, and here's the Daily Mail, not to be outdone or out-headlined. I mean, man-made earthquake shatters, strikes Blackpool, and consequences could be severe. And Murdoch's tabloid, The Sun, here's my favorite, Blackpool rocked. Oh my God, that's crazy. Maybe Suzuki was right. We're upsetting Mother Earth or Daenerys Stormborn or something. Except, you know, these quakes, I guess you could call them quakes, but fracking quakes are so small, you can't feel them. I mean, sure, they're on the Richter scale, but regular humans can't typically feel a quake of less than 2.5 on the Richter scale. A typical fracking job might be a 1.0. No human being can detect that. I mean, if someone is bouncing a basketball near you, if a car drives by near you, if someone's hammering a nail, those are technically seismic events too. They're not called earthquakes, but they're on the Richter scale. But when Gazprom needs an angle, they'll find one. Quakes. Here, I just typed in fracking and earthquakes into Google, and this website popped up on the first page with a terrifying picture of a huge rip in the earth, as in, that's what fracking did. But if you click on the link of the picture, which is what I did, it takes you to a real picture from a real earthquake 4 years ago in New Zealand, not near any fracking job, but from the massive 2010 Canterbury earthquake, 7 on the Richter scale, one of the largest ever. So seriously, an anti-fracking news website talking about a micro tremor so small no human can feel it, used a picture of New Zealand's worst natural earthquake in memory as a photo. Look, fracking is a human endeavor. It's an industry, and like every other human activity, every other industry, it has pros and cons, not just environmental, but social and political. I like fracking because it's making us rich and powerful, and it makes the world's worst regimes less rich and less powerful. It's that simple. The fact that it's safe and clean is a bonus. Fracking has powerful enemies, and they're taking advantage of our ignorance about the subject. Videos of flaming garden hoses don't help either. Neither do pandering politicians or know-nothing scientists like Suzuki, or massive eco groups spending millions of dollars in propaganda. But in the end, I think fracking will prevail, because at the end of the day, the world wants to be prosperous, like BC's $36 billion jobs deal with Petronas. And places like Ukraine and Poland, they don't just want to be prosperous. They want to be free. I called the oil sands ethical oil, because that's what they are. Fracking and shale gas, that's ethical gas by the same measures, but more than that, when you put yourself in the position of the hostages in Eastern Europe, forced to buy gas from Vladimir Putin, it's not just ethical gas, it's freedom gas. Don't you go away. I'll tell you how to learn more about the fracking truth next. An hour's gone by. I have just scratched the surface. There are so many other lies about fracking that I get into in the book. I mean, the lie that it uses too much water, the lie that it pollutes the air. There's just so many. And the hope of Gazprom and Qatar is to throw anything at the wall to see what sticks, and to rely on the fact that people just don't know a lot about fracking. I mean, look, it's been around for 50, 60 years, but who studies that other than petroleum engineers? And you have that word fracking. It sounds so ugly. It sounds like a swear. And people's natural instinct is to say, well, you know, better safe than sorry. But of course, they don't realize that the people selling them those lies are also the people selling them natural gas at jacked up rates. In the case of Eastern Europe, being held down because of Gazprom. Look, you can read the book. I'd be delighted if you want to. You can get it at any bookstore at my website, thecaseforfracking.com. I'm also going to put a book event. I'm going to go on a bit of a book tour. If I'm in your town, please come out, say hello. We can talk about it. I'll sign a copy for you. I intend to talk about fracking a lot over the course of the year, just like I have talked about my oil sands book. There's too much to cover in one show, frankly, too much to cover in one book. This is an ongoing battle because it's an ongoing issue. I mean, New Brunswick is teetering on the edge. Do they want to be a wealthy economy like, say, Pennsylvania and Texas based on fracking jobs? Or do they want to be a have-not economy because some foreign-funded eco-activists say, oh, fracking is scary? Do they want to be like British Columbia with the $36 billion export deal? And what happens in North America is a template for Europe. Do they still want to be cowed and BS'd by Josh Fox's propaganda? I hope not, but it's an important battle, especially for countries like Poland and Ukraine, sick of being a doormat of Mother Russia and Vladimir Putin's plans to recreate the Russian Empire. This is an important subject. I'm enjoying talking about it. Send me your thoughts at thesource@sunmedia.ca. What do you think of the book? Let me know if you read it. Love to talk to you some more. Keep fighting for freedom, including energy freedom, my friends. Bye-bye.